Dámy a páni, vážené hostky, vážení hostia, milí mladí ľudia, talentovaní, šikovní, plní inšpirácie, očakávajúci inšpiráciu. Vítajte na palube, vítajte na Clubovke. Vyrazili sme dnes v tento štvrtý deň programu Dní architektúry a dizajnu a Dní architektúry a filmu na toto detašované pracovisko. Záchranné vesty nebude treba. Je tu príjemne, naozaj ešte sme asi v takto skvelom prostredí Clubovku nerobili. Ja verím, že si teda užijete nielen dnešný program, ale aj toto prostredie. Vyzeráte, že ste pripravení dnešný večer si užiť. Takže ja vám takto v úvode želám, aby ste sa cítili príjemne a naozaj, aby ste si vypočuli ďalšiu skvelú prezentáciu zahraničných autorov. Dostaneme sa k nej už o malú chvíľu. Pozdravujeme aj vás, ktorí sledujete Dni architektúry a dizajnu online. Tešíme sa, že ste s nami, aj keď, tak ako to hovorím každý deň, dnes to platí špeciálne. Škoda, že tu nie ste osobne. Máte ešte možnosť to napraviť v prípade nasledujúcich dní. Určite si ale aj vy ten dnešný program užite. Predtým, než spustíme Clubovku, dovolte nám opäť predstaviť vám prácu niekoľkých našich partnerov, vďaka ktorým organizujeme aj toto dnešné stretnutie a na úvod sa zoznámime s tým, čo má nové Laufen.
Functionality and poetry are not a contradiction. Ceramic is not part of the past. It's timeless. It's part of life, and for many reasons, it's still the best material in many different fields. So Lua is a product for the final user, for everybody, but it's also a product for the project, for the architect. Obviously, it's connected to the water, which is going back to the origin, and we are all made of water. We all spend all the time in the water spaces. It's connected to the children, it's connected to life, it's connected to everything. So what dreaming more interesting than the water field and designing products which are dedicated to water. More than ever, the quality of interior space is an absolute priority, and the bathroom is probably the more intimate space. The bathroom actually is really a concentration of architecture. One of the main difficulties of Lua was not to design one object, but to design a complete range. Everything was really balanced. There was no product which was over-designed, nothing else had to be overcharged of signs. So it was important that every product was as simple as possible, functional, but at the same time very well proportioned and completely connected to the rest of the collection. A very simple line, very complete in each side, from the ceramic to the furniture, to the bathtubs, to the faucets, everything, but with no makeup. everything really clear, simple, very natural, very easy for the project, very accessible, very affordable.
Laufen, ďakujeme veľmi pekne. Pokojne aj váš potlesk si zaslúži náš partner. Ďakujeme za tú možnosť, že môžeme aj vďaka vám organizovať Dni architektúry a dizajnu a filmu. Vďaka aj Sandeku, na palube ktorého sa dnes nachádzame. To je teda odpoveď pre vás, ktorí nasledujete online, ak ste hľadali odpoveď na otázku, na akom zvláštnom, akom špeciálnom mieste dnes prebieha štvrtková Clubovka. No a pokračujem aj ďalej v tých dôležitých a skvelých menách. Ďalším partnerom tohto eventu je Wienerberger, ktorý ponúka spoľahlivé stavebné materiály. A som veľmi rád, že môžem privítať Alexandra Pintera, digitálneho produktového manažéra. Alexander, vďaka za spoluprácu s Dňami architektúry a dizajnu a príjmite miesto na tomto pódiu.
Ďakujem za uvedenie, pozdravujem vás. Dovoľte, aby som využil mojich 10 minút na prezentáciu jednej súťaže, ktorú organizuje spoločnosť Wienerberger. Tá súťaž sa volá Brickaward. Spoločnosť sa zaoberá výrobou stavebných materiálov, hlavne na báze keramiky, to znamená tehál. Preto je aj v názve odkaz na naše materiály. Takže chcem vám hlavne ukázať nejaké stavby, ktoré sa prihlásili na tohtoročnú súťaž, takže dúfam, že to bude pre vás zaujímavé. Niečo o spoločnosti. Wienerberger je na Slovensku už 30 rokov, takže verím, že pre viacerých z vás Wienerberger nie je neznáma značka. Je to ale rakúsky koncern, ktorý pôsobí už viac ako 200 rokov. Je to hlavne výroba stavebných materiálov, ako som pred chvíľou povedal, hlavne na báze keramiky, ale sú tu aj iné materiály, napríklad prvky z betónu. Čo sa týka produktového portfólia, začína to porotermom, to znamená materiály pre hrubú stavbu. Sú to tehly, preklady, stropný systém, to znamená komplet materiál na hrubé stavby. Ďalej máme v ponuke škrydlu keramickú, to znamená, určite poznáte značku Daad. Aktuálne 17 modelov od moderných až po klasické bobrovky, takže rôzne farebné povrchové prevedenia. Veľmi zaujímavá značka je Terka a to sú tie maloformátové plné tehly, ktoré sa používajú hlavne na fasádu a to hlavne teda dotvára tú architektúru stavieb. Treba vedieť, že pod Wienerberger patrí aj Semmelrock, to sú už spomenuté betónové výrobky a je to hlavne teda betónová dlažba alebo prvky pre spevnené plochy. Takže aktuálne na Slovensku toto je naše portfólio a týmto sa zaoberáme. Čo sa týka Brickawardu, je to celosvetová architektonická súťaž slúžiaca na podporu výnimočnej tehlovej architektúry. Takže nie je to iba nejaké lokálne, sú to v podstate stavby z celého sveta. Čo sa týka nejakej histórie, súťaž bola založená v roku 2004. Vždy sa vypisuje nepárny rok, to znamená, na tento ročník sa stavby prihlasovali minulý rok. Čo je veľmi dôležité, nie je potrebné, aby tam boli naše výrobky, to znamená, nemusí to byť poroterm, nemusí to byť terka, môže tam byť aj teda naša konkurencia. Dôležité je, aby to bolo v podstate z keramických tehál. A v podstate úlohou je dostať tehlu viac do architektúry, lebo v podstate tehla tu je, tehla tu bola a veríme, že tehla tu aj bude. Súťaž má viacero kategórií, aktuálne je to 5. Tá prvá sa volá Feeling at Home, to znamená, sú to hlavne menšie rodinné domy, alebo teda nejaké menšie bytovky. Druhá kategória sa volá Living Together, to znamená opäť bývanie, ale už v podstate trošku väčšom rozsahu, obytné domy, rezorty a podobne. Treťou kategóriou je Working Together, to znamená rôzne kancelárske budovy, komerčné stavby, a priemyselné priestory. Štvrtou kategóriou je sharing public places, to znamená rôzne budovy pre verejnosť, kultúrne domy, športové objekty, kiná, divadlá, v podstate všetko, čo patrí publiku alebo teda verejnosti. A posledná kategória sa volá building outside the box. To sú stavby, kde sa použila tehla nejakým netradičným spôsobom. Hlavne je to také atypické zabudovanie tehál a uvidíte na jednotlivých slajdoch. Takže dovolte, aby som vám ešte... Máme tu v podstate taký sumár tohto ročníka. Tento rok máme rekord, lebo sa prihlásilo z celého sveta 789 projektov. Ako vravím, je to celý svet, aktuálne 53 krajín. A pre zaujímavosť, minulý rok sa prihlásilo do tejto súťaže 7 slovenských projektov. No a teraz samotné jednotlivé stavby. Dovolili sme si vybrať nejaké zaujímavé stavby z jednoduchých kategórií. Takže to bola kategória Living Together. Druhou sú v podstate rodinné domy, Feeling at Home. Kategória kancelárie alebo administratívnych budov Working Together. Štvrtou kategóriou je sharing public spaces, to znamená rôzne väčšie stavby, ktoré sú pre verejnosť. No a posledná kategória sa volá Building Outside the Box, to znamená zabudované tehly atypickým spôsobom. Dobre, takže toľko výber asi najzaujímavejších stavieb, ktoré sa minulý rok prihlásili na Bricavard 2022. Budúci štvrtok bude vyhlásenie víťazov, bude to v podstate streamované a následne druhý deň, v piatok 10. júna, sa udejú vo Viedni 3 konferencie, takže pokiaľ by mal niekto záujem, to streamovanie teda k dispozícii. Každá súťaž pozostáva z toho, že sa aj vydáva kniha, kde sú v podstate najlepšie stavby, ktoré sa nominovali. Ak by ste mali záujem, je potrebné sa prihlásiť, na našej stránke sú kontakty a pokiaľ teda napíšete e-mail alebo nám zavoláte, tak milé radi vám tú knihu dodáme. Dostáva sa do nej 50 najlepších stavieb. Teraz som vám doniesol knihy z roku 2020. Ak by mal niekto záujem, proste také drobné darčeky vo forme tehličiek. Takže ja vám ďakujem za pozornosť a dúfam, že naše riešenie vás oslovili a budete verní spoločnosti Wienerberger a ich výrobkom. Ďakujem pekne.
Alexander Pinter a Wienerberger, partner Dní architektúry a dizajnu a Dní architektúry a filmu a dnešnej štvrtkovej klubovky. A do tretice ešte vďaka aj YIT, nášmu ďalšiemu partnerovi, a o jednom špeciálnom projekte sa dozvieme viac od Moniky Štekláčovej, generálnej projektantky, a Tomáša Augustína, projektového manažera. Rád vás takisto vítam na pódiu dnešnej klubovky. A ešte radšej vám odovzdám v tejto chvíli slovo. Nech sa páči.
Dobrý deň.
Dobrý deň všetkým.
Takže moje meno je Tomáš Augustín a ja som projektový manažér spoločnosti YIT Slovakia. Spoločnosť YIT Slovakia je stavebno-developerská spoločnosť, ktorá v rámci Bratislavy tvorí významné mestské štvrte. Aby som premostil teda aj na predošlú prednášku, tak jeden z takých významných projektov je projekt Cvirn, ktorý revitalizuje brownfield bývalé teda Cvernovej továrne, ktorú asi väčšinou poznáte, a teda výrazne také fasády sú teda tehličkové, takže to je také premostenie na tú predošlú prednášku. Ďalší teda projekt taký významný, na ktorom pracujeme aktuálne a je teda v podobnej lokalite ako projekt, o ktorom sa budeme neskôr rozprávať, je zóna Mlynské nivy. Je to územie ulice Mlynských nív, ktoré teda takisto je brownfieldom, budeme ho pretvárať, vznikne tam množstvo či už bývania, ale aj administratívnych budov. Zaujímavé je, že teda tento projekt sa výrazne zaujíma, alebo teda je zameraný na nové energokoncepty a získavanie energie vlastne zo zeme. Ďalej takým tretím projektom, ktorý nás čaká v budúcnosti a je takisto blízko projektu NUPu, o ktorom si viac povieme, je projekt Rozeta 2 a doplňa teda územie Štrkovca a teda takto sa dostávame k projektu NUPu. Projekt NUPu teda je brownfield, o ktorom nám viacej povie pani architektka Štekláčová, generálna projektantka projektu. Projekt NUPu sa nazýva teda NUPu konkrétne, pretože je to z fínskeho slova NUPu, ktorý v preklade znamená púčik. Keďže je to územie, teda, ktoré samé rozkvitá a teda vytvárame tam nejakú novú mestskú štvrť, ale zároveň je to aj priestor, kde obyvatelia môžu rozkvítať, keďže ten projekt je zameraný hlavne na mladé rodiny. A teda tento projekt budujeme už v roku 2016. Celkovo bude mať aj s prikúpeným pozemkom 16 etáp a aktuálne teda staviame 12, takže musím povedať, že to tempo výstavby je naozaj veľmi rýchle. A teda celkovo ku konceptu teraz povie viacej pani Štekláčová.
Celý koncept sa začal robiť v roku 2008, čo už je naozaj dosť dávno. Pokračuje až do dnes. Ako hovoril pán Augustín, tých etáp je veľa a mali by ale končiť celá... Za koľko rokov? 2025 by to malo byť celé ukončené, čiže celá výstavba v princípe bude trvať naozaj dosť dlhý čas. Išlo o územie na začiatku, ktoré bolo klasickým brownfieldom. To znamená, že bola to vlastne nákladná automobilová doprava, plocha, ktorá bola celá spevnená, mŕtva, nedostupná, uzavretá, betónová. A mesto, ktoré žilo a kde teda sú umiestnené obytné budovy, bolo úplne mimo. Základom toho celého konceptu bolo posunúť hranicu mesta a teda rozšíriť existujúcu plochu prievozu a vybudovať nový priestor, ktorý by bol živý, ktorý by bol zelený, čistý, otvorený. Základom celého konceptu je vybudovanie centrálneho spoločenského priestoru, ktorým sa stal centrálny park, okolo ktorého sa ďalej budovali ďalšie priestory. Celá dopravná obsluha celú dopravnú obsluhu sme navrhli tak, aby nerozdeľovala tento pozemok, ale stala sa v podstate okružnou, obvodovou, tak aby vnútro celého areálu bolo venované najmä ľuďom, ktorí tam budú bývať, ale aj ďalšie verejnosti, a to pešiakom, ktorí to budú využívať. Na centrálny park k centrálnemu parku sme navrhli pripojiť zelené dvory, ktoré sú v priamom kontakte s parkom a ktoré vytvárajú také poloprivátne zóny medzi jednotlivými objektami. Celý koncept osadenia objektov vychádzal z orientácie pozemku, samozrejme, a vzhľadom na to, aby sme dostali vyťažiteľnosť tých objektov čo najväčšiu, tak samozrejme východo-západná orientácia najlepšia. Z toho vznikol tento prvotný návrh, ktorý samozrejme mal ale mnoho negatív, ktoré sme sa ďalšou prácou snažili zmeniť. A jedným z negatívov bolo že tie priehľady a výhľady medzi jednotlivými objektami boli to samozrejme do dvora, ale nielen. A objekt, ktoré boli vedľa seba, sa stali zároveň aj bariérami pre výhľady z tých objektov. Aj tie priestory, ktoré tam medzi nimi vznikali, boli príliš veľké a príliš otvorené a preto sme sa snažili nájsť nejaké riešenie na to, aby sme objekty zorientovali viac do parku a aby sme dostali viac fasád otočených a orientovaných mimo výhľadov na jednotlivé domy samotné. Urobili sme takú jednoduchú vec a to bolo taká, že snažili sme sa teda ten základný kváder zlomiť tak, aby sme vlastne dosiahli tento koncept, ktorý bol vlastne základom toho, čo sa tam teraz buduje. Princíp bol ten, že zlomením tých objektov sa nám podarilo ako keby dostať oveľa viacej fasád, ktoré mali výhľady a priehľady do parku a zároveň vznikali mikropriestory také, kde nebolo možné vnímať ten veľký priestor ako jeden obrovský priestor, ale plynule prechádzajú medzi sebou a nikdy nevidíte veľkosť toho areálu ako takú. Ďalšou vecou, ktorú sme sa tam pokúšali nejakým spôsobom vyriešiť, bola priestorová orientácia vzhľadom na to, že tie objekty sú rovnaké, ale zároveň sme nechceli, aby vyzerali úplne ako rovnaké a aby sa dalo ľahko orientovať v rámci priestoru, kde sa človek nachádza. A na to sme zvolili takú jednoduchú vec, a to síce takú, že sme pre každý objekt zvolili inú farebnosť, napriek tomu, že základný koncept hmotový a architektonický je veľmi podobný. Toto je v princípe areál, tak ako je dneska viac menej vybudovaný už. Tie objekty, ktoré nie sú ešte v takej podrobnosti, tak tie sú momentálne v príprave, ale mali by byť dokončené do roku 2025, ste vravili. No a toto sú už vlastne zábery priestorov, tak ako sme sa ich snažili vytvoriť, to znamená, že aby neboli tie fasády vnímateľné ako celé a veľké, ale aby sa nám stále objavovali v tých jednotlivých priehľadoch a výhľadoch rôzne pohľady. Toto je fotografia z toho centrálneho parku, urobená zhruba asi v prvej tretine toho parku, čiže toto hovorí o tom priestore, ktorý tam vlastne vznikol, verejnom priestore, ktorý využívajú dnes už nie len tí, ktorí tam bývajú, ale aj tí, ktorí tam dochádzajú z blízkeho okolia. Cieľom bolo aj to, aby ľudia, keď prídu domov, neodchádzali za aktivitami, ktoré chcú tráviť vonku, niekam mimo svojho domova, nezaťažovali samozrejme tie cesty a nesadali do auta a neodchádzali mimo, ale aby ostali v tom priestore a mohli ho využívať. Toto je v podstate tiež záber z hora na ten park, alebo teda na časť toho centrálneho priestoru, ktorý je venovaný vlastne všetkým. Je tam niekoľko aktivít, ktoré potom budú predstavené ďalej. Tu vám predstaví potom pán Augustín v rámci toho centrálneho parku, ktorý má naozaj niekoľko zón, ktoré môžu byť využívané rôzne. Toto je napríklad jedna zo zón, kde sú umiestnené vonkajšie grily a človek si môže ísť grilovať vonku do parku a nemusí ísť do lesa. Nejaký detail. Toto je vlastne záber toho, alebo teda ukážka toho, ako sa nám podarilo naplniť ten koncept, ktorý sme mali na začiatku. A to bolo vlastne to, aby tie objekty boli vnímané naozaj fasády z hľadiska mierky ako ľudsky príjemnej mierky a nie príliš veľké domy, napriek tomu, že sú to 8 podlažné objekty. Ďalší zo záberov. A tu už ide park a tu nechám slovo pánu Augustínovi.
Ďakujem. Takže zhodou okolností, keď sme pripravovali tento projekt aj spolu s projektantami, tak fínske vajety na 100. výročie Fínska začalo tvoriť projekt, ktorý sa nazýval More Life in Yards. Bol to viac menej taký dvojročný projekt, na ktorom spolupracovalo množstvo či už architektov, dizajnerov, svetelných prvkov, sociológov, dokonca aj rôznych učiteľov a podobných skupín a vytvorili takmer 100-stranový dokument, teda na ktorom pracovali 2 roky, o dvoroch, ako k ním pristupovať, ako ich vytvárať, ako ich nastavovať, aby boli ako keby udržateľné a ako s nimi ďalej teda pracovať. A teda zhodou okolností aj tento park, ktorý bol teda vytvorený, podporoval túto ideu alebo celý ten návrh, ako keby vzájomne sa doplňali. A teda ten celý koncept hovorí ako keby o takých 3 zónach v tých samotných dvoroch alebo teda parkoch. To je aktívna zóna, kde teda ľudia aktívne trávia čas nejakými aktivitami. Spoločenská zóna, kde sa môžu stretávať, tráviť voľný čas, spoznávať sa so susedmi a potom oddychová zóna, ktorá ako keby doplňa funkciu aj pre tú staršiu generáciu, ale samozrejme aj pre bežných ľudí, ktorí si chcú oddychnúť. Teda takto bol vyskladaný aj ten dvor v Nupu, čiže má rôzne svoje časti. Teda tá konkrétna, tá aktívna, je tam futbalové ihrisko, ktoré zároveň slúži ako basketbalové ihrisko, kde teda už aktívne deti hrajú futbal. Potom je tam takýto výbeh pre psov, kde v podstate obyvatelia môžu voľne vypustiť svojho psa, je ohradený a teda čo najviac obkolesený zeleňou. Ďalej je tam takáto aktívna zóna pre workout, pre nejaké cvičenie. Samozrejme pre deti preliesky, tam sme sa snažili nastaviť pre rôzne vekové kategórie, aby naozaj to územie cca tých 2 hektárov toho parku, aby teda čo najviac pokrylo tie potreby toho obyvateľstva, ktoré tam funguje. Čiže máme tam rôzne prvky od šmykačiek, alebo čo ste mohli vidieť, tie preliesky, alebo pieskovisko. Potom je tam teda tá funkcia spoločenská, to je veľmi populárna grill zóna, kde teda obyvatelia môžu grillovať. Majú tam grill na rade, ktoré majú v spoločenských priestoroch, ktoré má takmer každá etapa v rámci svojho partra. Potom teda sú tam oddychové zóny, teda konkrétne túto využívam aj ja občas, kde sa dá tráviť čas či už piknikom, alebo čítaním kníh, alebo teda len tak oddychovaním. Okrem teda tohto parku sme sa snažili projekt ozvláštniť aj nejakými ďalšími vecami. Pomerne vo Fínsku populárne sú spoločenské priestory v rámci teda každého bytového domu, preto sme ich zakomponovali aj v tomto projekte. Dokonca klientov dávame možnosť ako keby si tú spoločenskú miestnosť otvoriť, čiže cez náš taký interný portál pre klientov v projektoch im dávame hlasovať, aké zóny tam preferujú, na základe toho to vyskladávame, takže majú tam takéto spoločenské priestory, kde buď oslavujú narodeniny, alebo teda niekedy tam majú aj domové schôdze a snažíme sa tam dať takisto najviac čo tej funkcie, aby to pokrylo všetky potreby tých obyvateľov. Ďalej sme, tým, že tam v rámci toho dvora bola vybudovaná taký bežecký okruh, ale samozrejme sa tam dá chodiť aj bicyklom a je aj veľmi blízka dostupnosť k cyklotrasám tohto projektu, tak sme začali od istých etap budovať aj takéto umývárne, kde si teda klienti môžu umyť bicykle, prípadne svojho domáceho miláčika. Keďže teda, ako pani projektantka spomínala, je to územie, ktoré bolo, by som povedal, v takom širšom centre a bolo treba tam pokryť aj niektoré služby, ktoré možno v tejto lokalite chýbajú, tak snažili sme sa vytvoriť čo najviac nejakých spoluprác, aby sme tam dotiahli takéto zdieľané služby, občianske vybavenosti, ktoré by teda toto územie podporili a musím povedať, že v čase teda covidu tento balíkobox bol rovnako veľmi obľúbený. Toto je taká špecialitka, ktorú sme, by som povedal, že dotiahli zo Starej tržnice, kde som teda predtým ešte tiež pracoval. A to sú zdieľané automobily. Obyvatelia majú k dispozícii 2 autá, ktoré cez rezervačný systém si môžu požičiavať. Je to zase snaha o to, aby sme z toho územia dostávali čo najviac aut, by som povedal, že vonku, a teda aby takéto zdieľané auta dokázali tiež pokrývať tie potreby tých obyvateľov. Rovnako musím povedať na rovinu, že zo začiatku to bolo ťažké s touto službou, lebo bolo potreba, aby naozaj začala fungovať, lebo teda ľudia sú zvyknutí na svoje auta, neradi požičiavajú druhé, ale momentálne sa táto služba má akože veľkú obľubu v rámci projektu a využíva sa teda dosť už výrazne. Zároveň teda sme sa snažili ešte podporiť toto územie aj nejakou verejnou dopravou. Nebolo tu úplne najlepšia dostupnosť MHDčky, takže sme sa rozhodli, že na vlastné náklady tu vybudujeme zastávku MHD, takže to sa nám podarilo, čo nás veľmi teší a rovnako teda budúce správy o dotiahnutí električky nás tiež tešia. Územie je trošku náročné na energetické kapacity, ale rovnako sme sa snažili aspoň zdieľané nejaké dobíjacie stanice pre elektromobilitu vybudovať, takže máme za sebou 2 a čakajú nás teda 2 dobíjacie stanice pre 4 autá, ale čakajú nás ešte ďalšie 3 pre ďalších 6. Toto je ešte taká špecialitka, ktorá je v podstate takým aj mojím koníčkom, a to sú bezdrôtové zariadenia, ktoré testujeme a vyvíjame na tomto projekte. Konkrétne od 6. etapy sú už v štandarde a sú to v podstate bezdrôtové zariadenia, ktoré fungujú na baterke a na neverejnom operátorovi, teda cez to je šírený signál, a máme prvé také lastovičky, ktoré testujeme, a to sú senzory poštovej schránky, čiže klient dostáva cez našu aplikáciu upozornenia, keď mu dojde pošta do schránky. Senzor vstupných dverí takisto si vie nastavovať notifikácie a upozornenia, kedy má otvorené dvere na byte. A tretia taká z nášho pohľadu ako keby štartovací prvok, kvôli ktorému sme to vyvíjali, a to je bezpečnosť kobiek. Čiže na kopkách sú senzory, ktoré ktoré zaznamenajú nejaké trasenie alebo pohyb a vedia teda klienta notifikovať o tom, že teda je tam nejaký neželaný pohyb. Z všetkých týchto skúseností a teda aj tým, že vo Fínsku vznikol ten materiál o dvoroch, sme sa rozhodli, že nechceme ukončiť ako keby našu pôsobnosť len na našich dvoroch, ale chceme tieto skúsenosti rozširovať aj ďalej, tak sme si povedali, že skúsime taký prvý krok a vytvorili sme taký otvorený grant Nech žije náš dvor, kde sa teda dvory v rámci Bratislavy mohli prihlásiť. Prihlásilo sa cca 20 dvorov. My sme z nich vyberali teda 3 víťazné, kde prvému sme teda darovali 15 000 na nejakú revitalizáciu, ďalšie boli rovnako finančne ohodnotené, ale dôležitým prvkom bolo aj to, že vlastne dostali nejaký od nás manuál alebo návod, ako postupovať pri renovácii alebo úprave toho svojho dvoru. Musím povedať, že výber bol veľmi ťažký, ale hlavné také kritérium bola udržateľnosť. A teda hľadali sme hlavne skupinu ľudí, ktoré naozaj ten dvor dokáže nielen ako keby minúť tie peniaze, ale naozaj si ho vybudovať, podieľať sa na tej tvorbe toho dvora, ale zároveň ho aj udržať. Prvý príklad bol jedno staromestské atrium, ako sa oni nazvali, čiže v Starom meste je dvor a toto druhé je susedia na dvore, čo takisto teda oni skončili na druhom mieste. Na základe toho sme sa teda rozhodli, že celé toto dáva zmysel a vytvorili sme brožúru, ktorá má, myslím, že nejakých 46 strán, ktorá hovorí o tom, ako postupovať pri dvoroch, čiže chceme toto šíriť aj ďalej. Aktuálne táto knižka je v tlači, takže som doniesol teda len takéto letáčiky, kde aktuálne sa cez QR kód dá pozrieť tá elektronická podoba, ale teda do víkendu by mala byť hotová a zároveň k tomu sme ešte vytvorili takú akciu Víkendy bratislavských dvorov, kde vlastne budeme spolupracovať s týmito dvormi a snažiť sa im poradiť teda či už ako finančne pristúpiť k rekonštrukcii, teda k úprave dvoru, ako koncepčne k tomu pristúpiť, ako samozrejme aj povoliť túto zmenu a ako to nastaviť, aby to bolo aj udržateľné v rámci správy a fungovania. Čiže to je za mňa všetko a ďakujeme za pozornosť a teda budeme radi, keď prídete na projekt NUPu pozrieť.
Ďakujeme.
My ďakujeme. Monika Štekláčová, Tomáš Augustín, ďakujeme za vhľad aj do vašej práce a vďaka YIT za podporu Clubovky. Práve na ňu ste prišli, vítajte aj vy, ktorí prichádzate medzičasom. Sme radi, že ste si nás našli a že ste sa pripojili na Sandeku, na tomto špeciálnom mieste, kde trávime 4. deň tohto celotýždňového festivalu. Práve Clubovke budú patriť 2 dni, štvrtok a piatok. Clubovka je špeciálny formát, ktorý už nejaký ten čas funguje a ktorej cieľom je predstaviť výrazných tvorcov súčasnej svetovej architektúry a dizajnu, ľudí, ktorí žijú svoj bohatý život v absolútnej a permanentnej tvorivej búrke a vášni. Takí sa vám predstavia aj v najbližších desiatkách minút počas tohto dnešného večera. Predtým, než ich pozvem na toto pódium, rád by som pozval aj Táňu Kolárovú, ktorá je hlavou, matkou, šéfkou Clubovky. Táňa, teda naozaj ďakujeme za pozvanie na toto mimoriadne miesto, ale asi aj pre teba je to v rámci Clubovky nie úplne všedné miesto konania.
Nie úplne všedné, ale všetkých vás vítam na palube Sandeku. Sandek loď vyšla z architektonického ateliéru Good, takže rukopis mladých architektov pod vedením Števa Polakoviča, takže vás tu všetkých srdečne vítam. Áno, Martin, 20 rokov sme už oslavovali, ale budeme celý rok oslavovať. Prvú Clubovku sme oslavili na inej lodi. To sa tak stalo, ale môže to vyzerať, že sme to tak pripravovali. Užite si dnešný večer a ako som hovorila na slávnostnom otvorení, snívajte, lebo aj Clubovka a takisto aj festival Daad vyšiel zo snívania. Ak budete mať veľa vášne a snívať, tak sa vám všetky vaše sny budú plniť. Pekný večer vám prajem, užite si to.
Krásne slová, ďakujem za ne. No rozhodne veľký potlesk si zaslúži aj Táňa Kolárová, ale zároveň teda celá tá partia, ktorá stojí za Clubovkou, aj za Dňami architektúry a dizajnu a Dňami architektúry a filmu. A keď už spomíname tie výročia, tak radi by sme pozdravili aj Nasliač, pretože Slovenská komora architektov tá zas oslavuje a práve v tejto chvíli na Sliači 30. výročie, k tomu aj 20-ročné oslavy existencie Cezara a mali by byť pripojení takisto vďaka online streamu aj ku Clubovke a áno, sme radi a srdečne pozdravujeme a zo Sandeku takisto želáme všetko najlepšie. No a to najlepšie, to si budeme užívať aj my v nasledujúcich minútach. Ja si prehodím stranu. Nech poviem správne všetko, lebo rád by som vám teraz aspoň v skratke uviedol hosti dnešnej Clubovky. Menšie zadania, rodinné domy, rekonštrukcia, dostavby, ale aj drobné architektonické intervencie. V tom sú majstri Koen Baeyens a Basile Graux, sú flámski architekti až na dreň. Ich tvorba je pevne ukotvená v lokálnych súvislostiach a aj stavebných tradíciách bez toho, aby podľahli pátosu tradicionalizmu. Vypracovali si vlastný a na najvýš osviežujúci štýl, ekvivalent flámskeho domu s typickou materialitou, no s veľmi atypickým narábaním s hmotou, priestorom a svetlom. Ich projekty vynikajú mimoriadnou komplexnosťou, ktorou vždy reagujú na zložitosť a značnú hustotu sídelných štruktúr a vždy je to prekvapenie, najmä v jednoduchosti odpovede na náročné architektonické situácie. Dvojica nadmieru inšpiratívna a verím, že množstvo inšpirácií prinesú aj pre vás, ktorí ste dnes prišli na Clubovku. Architektonické štúdio z Chentu, Graux Baeyens Architecten a ja vítam na pódiu našich hostí Koen Baeyens a Basile Graux. Gentlemen, join me on the stage. Welcome to Bratislava. Welcome on board. How has your day been?
Very good. Yeah, it's really a beautiful city. Nice weather. In Belgium, it's really raining at this time of year. So now we're enjoying it. Thank you.
We appreciate that you have accepted our invitation and we are looking forward to hearing your presentation.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the organization for having us. It's a beautiful setting. We never did a lecture on a boat with a nice view on a Donau. And thank you all for being here. So we are Graux Baeyens, GBA, maybe easier. I'm Basile Graux, and together with Koen Baeyens, we're going to give you some insight of how our office works. So in 2005, Koen and I just started as two young architects working on really small projects. During the course of our career, it grew to a bunch of 9 people, 7 staff members, and we work actually on a whole variety of projects. They all look quite different, but the approach, actually, the way we design and think is what combines them. So that for us, this is our signature. It doesn't like an informal way, but more in our approach. So for us, this approach is based on dialogue. From the beginning, we're always discussing it very truly, and we're looking for the right questions. Only by finding these right questions, we can try to stipulate or formulate an answer that's adequate to all this situation for each project. And we actually use all kind of methods. All media we can grasp, we're trying to use it. So it starts with sketches, we make scale models, we also work with 3D models. Everything that we can have, we use it just to test if our ideas are really good. And the design process never stops. It's actually during the construction, we still work and it continues, because when you start working on the construction started, you encounter some stuff that certainly with refurbishments that makes that you have to review your point of view on the architecture. And also the combination with the contractor, the civil engineer, makes that this dialogue continues, and we just like to continue doing that. So the process never stops. Detailing and the materialization is also a very important part of what we do. We like to work with the rough construction. It has a certain beauty and poetry, and it's an honesty. This honesty we like, and we try to put it in a lot of our projects where it's possible. So this is during the construction. Like I said, we continuously try to evaluate what we're doing, and if clients have some thoughts about it, or maybe another point of view, actually all projects are sort of compromise. But the idea is that the compromise is not a setback, but actually a point of putting your project further, so that afterwards, when it's finished, you don't look at it as a sort of a compromise, but rather as why didn't we think about this before? And there's some pictures of our new office. Like I said, we started 70 years ago, and we were in a small office, and it was too condensed. It was a little bit claustrophobic, so we moved 2 months ago. It's not quite finished yet, the outside, but for us, this is a big step and a way of working, so we can breathe again. So, architecture and dialogue. This is the main title. We divided the whole lecture in 4 topics. 2 to 3 projects per topic, but actually you can interchange them. We just try to enlighten some elements of it so that you get a better view of what we are doing.
So to start with, I would like to explain a bit what it's like to be building in Belgium. More specific, we are building in the Flemish part of Belgium, the Flanders. It is very often said that Belgium is one of the most ugliest countries in the world, and especially because of the city planning. The reason for that is because in Belgium we have a saying that every Flemish person has a brick in his stomach, which means that we all want to build our own house, we all want to own our own house, which is fun for us architects, but the result is that there is no more free space in Flanders. Everything is fully built, every plot available has already a house on it. So that means that in Belgium, and especially also in Flanders, we have very strict regulations, what you can do and what you can't do. Everything is very dense, all the houses are really close to each other, so you have to be really creative to make it, this whole puzzle of this dense living, to make it work. But we embrace it and we actually like it. Especially this project, this first one, it's a reconversion we did. It's a house in the outskirts. It's not in a city. It's in a rural landscape. To give you an idea, one of these very strict rules is that it's no longer allowed to build there. If there is a construction already on the plot, then you are lucky. Then you can do something with that, but the construction cannot be any bigger than 1,000 cubical meters. In this case, the L-shaped, it is more than 1,000 cubical meters. Doesn't have to be a problem. As long as you don't change it, you can keep it. But for us as architects, it's a bit of pain in the ass that you can't do anything with it. Especially since the question of the client was, this is actually the main house. All of this is a garage and a shed for garden equipment. So the bottom part of the L shape is completely in the way to have a nice relationship with a very large and beautiful piece of land. This is a picture of what it looked like after we took away everything we don't need. But as you can see on this picture, here in the middle and also the one on the right, the garden shed is still a pain in the ass to have a nice view to the garden. So we started thinking, what does this house need? The house itself, the top of the L shape, was actually, it worked as it was. It just needed some modern touches. But to create a relationship with this garden, we decided that to focus on an outside area here. So we wanted to make a covered terrace. So we started playing with the roof structure to see how can we create this outdoor terrace and still have a nice view to the surrounding landscape. But even that we were not allowed to do because we added some some cubical meters. So we had to change, we had to let this sloping roof thing, we had to let it loose. So again, we had a look at what was already there. Something we like building in Flanders is we are very much intrigued with the structures that already are present in the landscape. It's not that we want to do the next modern house. We just like what is already there and what can we do with that. So in this case, you can see this covered outdoor space we created. And then the roof, which is above it, is the exact same roof. Well, the form of the former shed. And we interpreted it the way you would expect a regular shed without an architect. How can you build it? And we tried to play with those elements. So here, it should be the same shed, but to be honest, it's a new shed with new bricks and new materials, but that's how we build in Belgium. So on the left side, it's actually the former house. Only the glass is new and the concrete bench is new to create a spot where you can sit, and the covered terrace is actually what we designed. This next project, just to explain another rule in Flanders, which is very important for our architecture. If you do reconversion, for instance, this house, it's probably from the 60s, a bungalow. Basile and I, starting the design, again, we thought, let's have a look at it. What is there to appreciate? To be honest, we didn't like a lot about it. It was just a crappy house, which had no qualities anymore. It wasn't even that well built. What we did like was the neighbor part, where you have this nice old sheds combined to each other. That's typical Flemish architecture without architects, but we don't mind. But a very important rule in Belgium, and it's a bit strange, probably, if you do new house, you pay 21% taxes. If you do reconversion of a house, you only pay 6% taxes on the building cost. So that's 15% budget if you can stick to the reconversion. The idea behind it is really good because the government wants to help people to renovate their house and uplift the house market. What happens in reality is that as an architect, you just look, can I use the walls of this house? And can I make a complete new house out of it? A very important rule to be able to use the 6% taxes is that you can only double the volume. So we scratched everything we didn't need on the house. And what remained was a square and a chimney in the center of the square. And by doubling this volume and bring this square to the front, so this is actually what we kept. Also this part we kept, and a chimney in the center. And then we doubled it to the front. This is where the street side is. So it was still able to renovate at 6% taxes. And we were very happy when we saw these 3 squares. That was something that we actually thought, yes, this inspires us. This is something we can work with. Something where we also like reconversions and we like new houses. For instance, this little part here, if this would be a new house, we would not stop designing unless we are able to get rid of this thing here on top. And everything should fit in the 3 squares if the 3 squares is the main concept. But doing reconversions, it helps us to become more flexible and again, be more curious, what is there and how can we play with that? So we choose to keep this little part, and it became the entrance. And it helped us to enter the house in the main square where the fireplace is at the center. So this is the last square where you have relationship with the garden. It's a big square, it's about 8 by 8 meters, so we needed something to help us with the roof structure. We love to play with those elements then. How can we make something out of it? Then it's more than just a column. So we played with the intersection of the beams, put a skylight on top of it. This is the relationship you have from the garden, from the last square. 2 sliding doors to have this relationship, but Not too much glass, because it was really important in this case to feel the square and the height of the room. Then the center part, which actually had no connection anymore with the garden, but it had this magnificent chimney, and that became all of a sudden the centerpiece of the house. Again, we found it interesting to have some relationship with these little sheds that were built from the neighbor. We don't like it to have blind walls and just looking at your own plot. We think it's really interesting if you have some connection with the surroundings. We don't like our architecture to be asocial. So this is the view you would have from the neighbors. This is also the part where the midday sun enters the house. On the right side, you can see the original wall, which has actually been mirrored, and this is then the new wall. So this is the patio you have and the relationship we have with the patio. And again, in the center, there was this old chimney. We changed it a bit, so it became a new chimney, again, so we can play with it, making a structure element out of it, having this large beam that cantilevers, so the windows did not have to have another element in front of it. And again, the relationship with the patio. Then this third project, just to give you a little bit of feeling, what's it like to be building in Flanders. Since everything is fully built, a lot of the assignments we have is, for instance, this kind of houses. It's not very nice, it's not modern, it doesn't have that much qualities. Very often new clients think, do you like this assignment? Do you think you can make something out of it? Because it's really just a plain house, as you have lots of them. But on the other hand, even these houses have good structures and are already very expensive to buy. So it's wishful thinking to just demolish it and create something new, then the cost would be way too high. And again, to be honest, we don't even mind this house. We don't bother whether it's modern or it's not modern or it's up to date. So we just have a look at it. What can we do with the house that it becomes something else? So on the left side, we have the existing situation. This is actually a style of house. In Flanders, we call it a fermet. It's an interpretation of an old farmhouse. For some reason, in the 80s, everybody loved it, and it's fully built of these kind of houses. But since the structures are nice, it's good enough to have a look what can you do with it. So on the right side, you can see we decided, let's keep as much as we can from the existing situation. That's good for the budget. And then we added this one wing, which is 19 degrees on the old wing. And that allowed us to have a double height ceiling, put in a central staircase and a dining room. So here you can see the central staircase. All of a sudden, you have a lot of relationship with these two roofs, how they connect to each other. Also, by creating this extra wing, all of a sudden you have a nice relationship with this very small garden, but you have a garden in the back, a garden in the front. Here you can see that we just almost copy what is already there, the brick, the tiles on the roof, but we interpretate it a bit. On the inside, things we love to play with is construction elements. We don't like to hide them. We think it's fun to play with and show it and give an identity to the house, which is actually coming from the main concept. On the other side, also the new element on the top, playing with the bricks. I'm not sure whether it's clear what we did with the bricks. And then creating a little bench underneath the window of the kitchen for just to have a coffee in the morning sun. And then here again, another bench for the evening sun, playing with this regular brickwork, but by putting the window 40 centimeters more to the back, creating something. Also what you see here with the wood and the normal gutter, it's actually very common way of building, but with a slight touch to it. And here again, a bit from the inside, with the beams being shown, the wood from the roof, and some concrete elements.
Thank you. construction and architecture. I'm going to show you some projects where the influence of the construction or the architecture is just becoming one. There's no difference what was first and what is second, certainly with the first project. House NDP. The premise is actually a very long plot from 150 meters. Then the house was obliged to be there on the junction between the canal that connects two major cities in Belgium and the plot itself. What was interesting is that we could have beautiful views on this canal and the wetlands in front of it. On the right side of the plot, there's also a lot of trees, and we knew that they will still be there for at least a couple of decades. But on the left side, when we were assigned to it, there was just 3 plots with no houses. So our client bought this plot knowing that there were 3 houses coming next to it. And because the building regulations allowed us to go at least 9 meters, we knew that the neighbors would do the same thing, and it's pretty narrow in between them. It's just 6 to 7 meters. So how do you manage actually to get the sort of privacy you want to have? And from the other hand, just having these looks, these vistas towards the water, the garden, and the trees next to it. Another element that we had to encounter is that it's a dike, and so the plot is at least 2 meters lower than the dike itself. So if you want to have these views on the wetlands and the water, it was a logical step to have these the living spaces on the first floor and the second floor. And so we started to play with this triangular shape, and the reason for that is that we didn't want actually to create a blind wall towards our neighbor, and certainly we wanted to have the privacy. By creating this triangular shape, you could, in the corners, create rooms that are pretty intimate and opens up. You get sort of diagonality, vista towards the areas you want to emphasize. And so we played with it, tried different structures, different things, and at the end, we choose actually this one. So these are the plans. What you see is that by making these triangular shapes, you only support the house on 2 points. And for the stability of this house, we needed the core. So from the structural point of view, this core came into the design and determines how we manage the living areas around it. So this crossover between the structural needs and the architecture is here pretty clear. What we also did is that every level, the shape changes. So we take some distance from the neighbor so that this building that is 10 meters high wouldn't be that massive. And we take more distance from the neighbor and opens up. So in the corners here, you get it on the first level. You get terraces and the vistas towards the forest, the trees, the garden. But by making it change, it creates sort of a dynamic and also some more space and air in between them. And when you wander around the house, it changes completely. Each time you have another point, the shape changes. So it's pretty interesting. And of course, when we were thinking about which material we're going to use, concrete was the most obvious. Here, the concrete is not only for the stability, but it's also an architectural, the texture, how we play with the facade itself is pretty interesting because we use planks, standard planks, and for example, we left some openings between them, just putting a nail in between them so that the concrete could pour in between them, and when the light is touching the building, you get a lot of shadow, so it's something extra. It's very simple. Of course, for the contractor itself, it was very difficult. When you see all the reinforced steel we put into that, it was very difficult to have a perfect concrete pour. And yeah, the guys really did a great job doing that. And here you see on the ground floor, we use this canopy actually as sort of a transition zone between the public space and the house itself. You can use it to park the cars, but also with the kids playing there when it's sometimes raining. On the top, you get on the left the living area, so the sitting area. It's quite more intimate, and it opens up. Let's say on the right side, you see the image where you're sitting in the dining room, and you have these views towards the. I have to look. Yeah, the forests, and so this dynamic in between it and this contrast between open and closed works very well. And a view on the wetlands in front of it and the canal. We like this image on the left because it shows the scale of the project. When there's the boats passing by, they are huge, and just something we encountered and we really love it. I think there's a project missing. Yeah. Stop, Mom.
So this next episode is about our clients. For us, the client is really important, for obvious reasons of the budget, of course, but that's not what we mean by that. But we believe that our architecture is a mixture of our DNA and the DNA of the client. So we are always trying to find clients where we can have a very interesting conversation with. To give you guys an idea, we do only 6 projects a year. And to get these 6 projects, I think we have meetings every week with new clients, just see if there's a connection. We believe that for every client, there's a good architect, so, and it's just trying to find out where this match can be. Oh, this is yours. There's been a mixture in the projects, but...
Not a problem. So this house is also a reconversion. This is how we saw the project the first time. So it's a typical bungalow close to Ghent, where we live. And the client had a really standard program for his family. And when we stripped the building, because it didn't have any charm in it. So we just looked at it as a structural element. And as you know, when you use a bungalow and you want to build a volume on top of that, the foundations are not calculated to have a very heavy element on top of that. So it was pretty logical to work with wood. So for us, we wanted to create a roof and not just a simple box on top of that. So we're trying to play with it. But budget-wise, you always have to look and find a solution. So at the end, it became a box. But could it be more than just a simple box on top of that, like you see a lot of them in Belgium? So we try to play, like you see on this left side, with these canopies. And how can the structure that we use for the upper floor influences us to use on the canopies? So we want to make a transition zone actually between the house itself and the garden. And here on the right, there are some kind of details we were working on to see how we could manage this element on itself. The ground floor, we over-exaggerated some elements like the windowsills to create benches, informal benches. We like to place with these elements because when you go outside and it's not really summer but it's good weather, you don't have to take out your furniture to have a good moment, but just you sit down, you enjoy. We've created one on the front where the evening sun is coming, so certainly in the COVID period you could sit with your neighbors without going inside a house. So create possibilities more than an obligation, but these possibilities are very interesting. And this is the house, how it's finished. So we treated the upper floor with roofing. The reason for that is that it's a very standard element that's used to finish the top of the roof to make it watertight. But when you try to play with it in a different way, it really gets some aesthetics of it. So I tried to work with the lanes, to align them with the windows, to have a good collaboration with the contractor, because usually they don't have to use it as a finishing material. So they really enjoyed doing that, but you have to put some effort into that so that they are really motivated to do it. And the volume underneath it, we clad it with wood. This canopies we created to create this sort of transition zone. We added also sort of a porch, a terrace to it, just to emphasize that and to create really spaces where you could put your table. It embedded the house and the landscape very well. So this is the ground floor. On the left, the existing situation. And as you can see, we made it smaller. Again, with the 6% rule that you can only double what's there, so we had to play with it and budget-wise. So we tried to analyze what's interesting about these walls, what you can reuse and create some new spaces. And there's some images from the inside. So the ground floor is fully in brick. Again, the tectonic we used to stabilize the whole house. We let it visible. Also the roof structure to create stability, but also a good floor. We leave it like that. And we create, for example, on the inside, big window sills again to create this opportunity to put something there to be more than just a window. And in the center, the concrete staircase. It's sort of a pièce de résistance, something really interesting to make with the contractor. And the top floor is finished completely, and the consequence of using wood, finished in plywood, with just these two babying walls of the staircase continuing to stabilize the whole structure. And then these canopies. Well, we worked a lot on it, so just to have some tension. Working on actually the corners of a building is always interesting because you can, it defines a lot about this architecture or the architecture in itself. So, there's some images that's, okay, cool.
So what I wanted to say about our relationship with the clients, this specific project is a house with a vet practice for small animals, and we are building it for 3 generations. So it's actually, the main house has been built by the grandfather. The son and his wife are also both vets. They will be working and living there, and they have 4 children, very active children who also want to be involved in the whole family business. So when the son and the daughter-in-law came to us with the house, the question of the wife especially was, please do something about this neo-hacienda thing. I really don't like it. Can you tear it down? No, the budget won't allow it. Okay, but can you completely change it, please? Take away the bricks, the roof, everything. Make it white. So we had long talks with her and convinced her that even if we would make a big white modern block out of it, it would just be another ugly big block. So that wouldn't work. The question of the husband was, my father built this house almost with his own hands. And he really loves it. He will be working there for many more years. Please, can you have some respect for the house? So that worked really well for us because we always think you have to have 2 reasons to tear something down. If it's just ugly, that's not enough reason for us. So we try to think, what can we attach to this old hacienda so the new and the old can work together. So this is the plan. I'm not sure if it's visible, but this is actually the existing house. We attached 3 elements. In the front, we made a canopy, so you have a new entrance to the vet practice on the right and to the private house. The private house also got a very large canopy to have a nice relationship to the garden. And then the main feature of the assignment was to create a larger vet practice where the three of them could work together. So this was one of the first sketches we had discussing the old house and at the same time discussing what could be this pavilion that we are putting against it. The part of the old house, instead of being bothered that we have to keep it, we started discussing how can we make it nicer or how can we appreciate it more. So in the beginning there was a really ordinary gutter there. It was only 20 centimeters and then a gutter. So we decided let's make it longer, finer. So now it's about 80 centimeters. The gutter has been put on top of it. So this original roof becomes more thin, more elegant. In the interior of the house there were some very large neo-Baroque elements, but again, it is a staircase. Do we like it or not? In the beginning, not that much, but it has craftsmanship in it. It's very well built, so we can appreciate that. So we decided let's keep those elements, and by combining it with our new canopy and the new glass facade, and we even kept the old nature stone elements that was around the old entrance. So, and we believe that by combining those two, something new happens. So here you can see this entrance on the left side and then the extension on the right side. Why concrete? Of course, we love to play with concrete, especially if we can do it in a really honest way where the concrete is also the structural element. It takes a lot of tender love and care to have it look this simple, especially every time the contractor asks, oh, can't I just put a metal beam or something behind it? Would make it easier, but we don't want that. Everything, we want our concrete to be poured on site. We don't like it if it's too perfect. If it comes out of the factory, then we don't like it anymore. That's not why we want to play with concrete. So why concrete in this part? Because we believe that the concrete is modest enough to let the original house be itself, but in the same time, the concrete is also strong enough to be standing on its own. So this was a mock-up we made to discuss with our contractors on the site what we mean with all the joints we have, the very important lines. So thinking with them, how can we pour it in different times? And this is how the extension looks like. So these are actually the load-bearing structures. This is the relationship you have from the interior. And again, this concrete element. So here we believe that this concrete, modest enough for the original house, but on the same hand, strong enough to be standing on its own, that it's not just a little annex built next to the house. This house, again, to explain how important clients are in the story and in the dialogue we are trying to establish. This is actually a house we did for a couple in their 70s. Well, they were in their 60s, but yeah, if they are listening, they are in their 60s. And but it's an old couple. And their question was, they really love to live in this small rural village. They want to stay, they have no kids, they have no family left, and they just want a house where they can live for the rest of their lives. So they came up with the idea, we want to have a house where we can live on the first floor with lots of views, lots of terraces, lots of canopies to have some shelter. And on the ground floor, just create a family house that we can rent out or even let a family live there for free with kids to enjoy the garden. And the deal is that then they help out with groceries and all of that so they can live there for their old age. But the challenge for us was to have a a full house on the first floor with balconies, with terraces, and also different kind of terraces. So we start playing with this roof. It was quite difficult to make it less of a large volume. But luckily the clients, when they first came to the office, this elderly couple, we were a bit surprised that they came to the office and we asked, yeah, have you seen our website? Because we're not sure, are we doing what you like? But then their big example was Julian Lampens. I'm not sure if you know him. If you don't know him, please look him up. It's one of the modernists from Belgium, brutalist. It's already 2 generations before us. He has done some amazing buildings. None of them are really well known, but in Flanders, we love him. So when they spoke to us in the first meeting of Julian Lampens, we were completely sold. So here again, playing with this concrete poured on site. On the main floor, you have this caretaker home. On the first floor, you have the large apartment. This is why the surroundings and the relationship with the surroundings was so important for the client. Here you feel that on the one hand, you have this relationship with the environment, but on the same time, you have different places in the house. On the left side, you see a central core, which around the dining table, the kitchen, and the living area are being designed. So it's, although it's one story plan, you still have different places to go to. This is a little sketch we made for the end of the plot, where the street begins, and to give the house an even nicer integration in the green element. We love to play with the concrete again. This last one I will explain about the client. This is actually what, as an architect, you would think is the dream client, because it was an artist studio. So when he contacted us, this artist, Steve Smet, we were really thrilled that we can make an artist studio. We finally thought, now we can do something raw, something with balls. Hey, it's not going to be a house. Unfortunately, Steve is a romantic, so he likes small windows, he likes little nooks, he likes little places to read a book, work on his artwork. On the other hand, what worked really well, he's being inspired by the Flemish context. So he really loves the rural landscape. He uses that for his artwork, so that was obviously a very good combination with us. And also, luckily for us, the question was that he needed a big workshop for bigger pieces of art. So this is the existing situation. Again, typical Flemish farmhouse, where the question was, there were already 3 volumes, and the question is, how can we make 1/4 big volume, which has to combine with all the rest. This is actually a very important building for us in the design process. The question of the client was demolish this part and also demolish that part. That's where you can put the big volume. So we start designing, how can we make this big volume? How can we give it this Flemish atmosphere so it fits well in the surroundings? We played a lot with a fence that we wanted to put around it. The client said no. You can appreciate that. But then, instead of bringing in one big volume, we convinced the client to keep this volume and used it as a mixture of a cluster of different small volumes. So instead of creating only this big one volume, we kept that one. We also created a little one here, which is the entrance and also a kitchen area. Then you have the main volume for the artwork. And then a last volume here, we created a little shed, which is his study and library. So for us, this project was all about the scale of the artwork with really large doors, but on the same time, also the scale of the artist. Really small doors to go to the kitchen area and to go to the study. So this is the kitchen, toilet, shower, and this is where his study is. So here you feel this double height space. Again, having some fun with the constructional elements and putting lights behind it so it becomes a part of the architecture. On the left side, you feel these really small entrances to go to another world. The large door for the artwork. And this left window is really important for us. That was actually the most far away point of the design. And we wanted to have a really small window there that invites you to go all the way to the back of the plot. And just to annoy you, we made it too low. It's not really to annoy you, but it's to invite you to come closer and sit on the bench or in front of the window, and again have this really different relationship with the surroundings, although you are in this really large room. And this is the shed at the back. Different material, but again, the structure is the architecture. This one is completely in wood, and the wood has been used to also be the finished material. And this is not actually how he uses it, because he does uses it to make his large artworks, but from time to time, he's letting friends of him come there to play music, because we never meant it to be, but the acoustic is really nice, thanks to all the rough materials that has been used. And the fun part is that now that his artwork is also changing, because now he's making new artwork that's been inspired by the music that they are making.
Last topic is a context. An obvious one for every architect, I think. The first project is a farm. When the client called us, we knew the client before, and he called us, I want to invite you to see the plots. So it's a rural context. It's only 20 minutes from Ghent, and it's actually on a hill. So when we came off the main road and descended this hill, in the corner, we found out this house itself. And it's located, the whole part in front of it, these wetlands, you can't build there anymore. And what's fun is that you can't see the river from the plots, but sometimes you see the boat passing by in between all the greenery. So it's a really strange view you have. So this is when you zoom in. There were three buildings existing, and although it's a rural context, usually known in Belgium by just having separate single houses, here you have more the density of a sort of a village. So it's a small village separated from the main village. And this is what we saw. The strange thing is that the client wanted to have a new construction. He wanted to tear everything down. But we were very charmed about the elements we saw. You have the main house, here, and actually on the picture you still see the farmer. They lived there for 3 generations. A little bread house where they baked the bread before, and then a stable. And this clustering was very fascinating for us. So we tried to convince the client to let us make a design where we go further with this existing part. And so we added 2 volumes. Playing with this idea of this clustering, continued that, sort of writing a next chapter to the story that was already there. And we copied actually the building materials and the typology of the house itself. Trying to be more on the back, not on the front, to just be subtle and to blend in with what is already there. But still we wanted to make modern architecture. So the way these 2 wings were put was to create actually interesting spaces outside, here in between, the same kind of clustering that exists here. Also in the center is a patio, and these 2 wings are have beautiful views on the orchards that's here. So this is a scale model that explains it, and we separated all the functions. So the main house becomes the kitchen and entrance. The upper north house part is all the bedrooms and bathrooms, and this is the living area with the office. And this is a view of this clustering. Really not in your face, just being respectful for what's already there. But still we wanted to make modern, contemporary architecture. So it's all in the plans. And the junctions in between them, the corners, where they touch or just not touch in between them. So we treated these corners explicitly to be a bearing structure and also to create a transition zone between one wing and the other one. And the way we put them is to have beautiful views. Even though you are on one part, you can look through it to the other one. This patio in the middle is very interesting, very important, because it keeps the light going into the house at all times. And on the left were actually the sketches we made in the beginning, where the new wings and a central chimney. We like chimneys, so it's a typical thing for these old houses where you have really large chimneys. So this is how we treated these corners. Again, with concrete bearing structure of it. And from the inside on the right, how it looks and how it connects actually everything. Also, in the past, we put the glass in front of the bearing existing walls. It's just small details that for us are very important, and creates more dynamic and more air. We try to put a little bit of poetry in everything. And again, where they just don't touch. The tension between these two volumes on the scale of the building is very interesting. It allows you, of course, to go into the patio. And other elements we play with, we overemphasize the typical elements that are used in these kind of farmhouses. Like the window sills, we just made them bigger, 80 centimeters deep. So when the evening sun comes in, you can slide the door open, and the interaction inside-outside is getting more intense, and you could sit on it. And the topography of the house is very important too. So it goes really uphill, and so the fact that they just not leveled creates this sort of terrace structure, and we play with that on the inside too. So on the left photo, you see the upper wing where all the bedrooms are. At the end, we have a vista towards the trees, and the middle one is more the living area with this sculptural chimney, and the right was the original beams and structure of the roof that we kept. Actually, we noticed that on the left corner, the house should have burned in the past, but it actually just didn't happen because the whole beam was there eaten away by the fire, and the owner never knew about it. The next one, where the context is very important, is this little house. It's also in a rural context. So a typical thing in Belgium is that we try to densify the plots that are still there. So they try not to build on new plots, so they want to densify the existing ones. So people with big gardens, they are allowed to cut it or chop it down in smaller pieces. So we got a piece of land that's really small, but actually quite interesting because it's the rural context and the topography of it. If we manage to find a design, we could have beautiful views and let the light in from all directions. As you can see, we have a beautiful farm here, an original one, but it's quite blocking the view. The two neighbors are really close, so it's just in between them. We could manage that. So logically, we decided to put these living areas on the first floor. And actually the entrance with the bedrooms and stuff, we put it on a sort of a concrete construction who's semi into the ground, just to manage this slope we have in the terrain. To do that, we also have a lighter structure on top of that. And the shape of the pitched roof and the chimney is something that is also comes from the building regulation we have. We grew up with the idea that modern architecture or modernistic architecture should have a flat roof. But of course, over the years, we saw that pitched roofs are even more interesting than flat roofs. So we embrace this kind of rules that oblige us to think differently about architecture and try to make more interesting architecture about it. So it's a square 8 by 8. We made the entrance on the back. we took out a piece where you created canopy and invites you to come in, and then divided it in 6 parts. Within the core, the center, the spiral staircase. We wanted to make it very intimate and introvert area due of the functions, and so the windows are kept very small. The interesting thing about it is that the light becomes more intense. Your eye is just adapting a little bit, but the intensity of the light is completely different in comparison with the full glazed house. We worked with brick just to support the whole concrete slab. View of the bedroom, and what we really like is how the light filters in and touches this center core. A big shower, and just simple materials, sometimes paints. The blue is MDF, blue MDF. And then for the central staircase, because we didn't want to have the bricks too much fragmented, we were looking to put them on a different way, just in the length instead of in the wideness. And so we had to find a solution, so we experimented and cut them off. And we tried different kind of bricks, the typical Porotem and stuff like that. And the nice thing is that when you cut a certain brand of it, the color changes, and you get this filtering of the light. So the texture of this central core is really interesting, in combination with the pure white, simple steel stair. And the upper floor, again, a really simple plan where you just cut off 2 corners and create some terraces. And these big windows create these vistas towards the field in front of it and over the houses on the back. And also next to the chimney, a diagonal view over the streets. We used the wooden structure, and the logic of when you're using a material is what can we do more with that than just being the material. So it should add something, and here it adds the tectonics, adds to the aesthetics of the building. It's always difficult to photograph the views, but and these are some drawings we made in the beginning. How this tectonic, how can we play with that? Can it add something to it? The honesty of the materials. The whole structure is insulated from the basement or the ground floor from the inside. And this is actually a view from the field with the neighbor's dog. And then the last project, House BL. This house is quite different. There was an existing house on that plot. This is the one on the right. When we talked about the farmhouse, what we really loved was the clustering, how it felt, the fact that it's old, it has a charm to it. And but the construction of the house wasn't really good. So we had to reinforce that existing house to make it keep standing there. This is a different thing. The house itself is a sort of mixture between a chalet and a typical Belgian house. Not really keen on that. But the structure itself, because the house is only from the 60s, was really good. So what we decided quickly is to tear down and strip it to its naked structure. But what's most interesting is the fact that it's located on the second building line, so behind all these houses. It's really close to Ghent. It's only 6 to 7 kilometers. So being that far behind all these houses and just have this huge park from the castle that's next to it on the right, you feel like you're in a rural context, but actually you're really close to the city. So how can we play with that and emphasize what's already there and make it better? The house itself, when we visited, had not a lot of lights. The windows itself were not so large, were okay, and but when we analyzed the plan, you could do much more with that. So it was a simple intervention by creating just a central corridor, a sort of an artery into that make completely other dynamics and possibilities of the placement of the rooms. This upper part becomes the night part, so with all the bedrooms, dressings, bathroom, and so on. And on the lower part, we have the new extension. So actually, we could keep 95% of the basic structure of the house itself just by tearing down here in the center the chimney and this wall and creating one window. The whole house feels completely different. And this is the view of this window towards the paddock of the neighbor. And this is more from the entrance, the connection between the new building and the old building. So it's pretty wide. So it's an addition to the kids' room. They really play a lot there, and it tried to breathe because creating a long corridor is always difficult. Will it feel narrow? Will it feel so? Looking for the right wideness of it is an important element. Because we kept that much of the house, also the wooden roof structure, it felt pretty logical to continue this this kind of architecture, kind of typology we had. And the plot is slightly actually going down. And the house, the former house, or the existing house, is built 80 centimeters to 90 centimeters higher than the ground floor. So how can we connect the new wing to the ground floor where the living areas would be, and try to do more with that in the architecture itself or the form itself. So the first step was to tilt a little bit this new part so that we had better views on the paddocks and the fields of the ponies of the neighbor, and also to frame this forest with on the corner a beautiful big tree. I think it's 35 meters high. It's a huge tree. So, and in the middle, we make the entrance. So here we see a view of the entrance door, a big pivotating door, and how we managed to play with this topography of by creating two steps towards the living room, and that creates sort of a windowsill on the inside. Although this living area is pretty small, just for the family, it allows people, when there are more people, just to sit on these windowsills. This is a section of it where you see that the dining area, who is more to the left, is also 3 steps lower. In the middle, we have this chimney that divides the 2 rooms and gives some intimacy towards it, and it's a double high ceiling. So each time you go down, the room actually changes completely. These are some drawings we made during the construction to make it really clear and simple how we wanted to stack these concrete blocks that were poured in the workshop of the contractor. Like I said, creating a windowsill, a place to put a TV, and then further on to actually create the base, the foundations for this chimney, and also the countertop for the kitchen. Everything was built on site, and built on top of that. So it was open, it rained on it. So it's a rough material. It can have something. Some details of the chimney. We wanted to have really open chimney. And maybe here, what I forgot to say is the scale. It's very difficult in photography to show the scale of it. When you see the size of a person and the windows, these are 3.50 meters high. So when you're cooking or you're close to the kitchen countertop, you have a majestic view and you see the whole trees and the sky too. So you have a whole picture of it. And this was the attempt to frame this. Voilà. Thank you very much.
Big applause for our guests. Thank you very much. That was fantastic presentation. Maybe after such an interesting presentation, there are some questions for our guest from our audience. Any questions? No? OK, využite potom osobnú možnosť podebatovať sa s nimi. Thank you very much one more time and enjoy the rest of this evening with us. Thank you. Ešte jeden potlesk venujeme Koenovi a Basilovi, ktorí zastupovali dnešných špeciálnych hostí na Clubovke. Dobrá káva, dobrý dizajn, dobrá architektúra, dobrí ľudia, dobrý večer, všetko to sedí. Aj vy si užite zvyšok tohto večera v našej spoločnosti, a teda aj v spoločnosti hostí, ktorí pre vás priniesli túto prezentáciu. Želáme vám pekný večer.